Yeah, I mean, your work is amazing. It really is.
Thank you. I
It's
appreciate
hard
that.
to define it as anything else but amazing. um, I've definitely been a fan of it, and I know a lot of other people have. Now, you say, how many fire agate have you carved in your whole life? Because you keep saying that you don't really do it, but you carved a few, and I've seen in your feed and on the groups that we're both a part of, I've seen, stone recarved or stone finished by, and then your name on it. So, uh,
Well,
is it just a hubris thing to where it's like I don't want to sound hubris, like I carve a lot of fire agate, even though I've carved these five? I mean, you obviously know what you're doing around this stuff.
well, there's a difference between carving a fire agate and improving what you get. And I apologize to all fire agate carvers out there, but there are a lot of people that are very talented in carving fire agates. But number one, and again, this is just in my humble opinion, I think there are very few fire agate carvers that really know how to put a final finish on the stone. I almost always refinish the fire agate stone, whether they came from the most renowned fire agate carvers in the world or from, Joe Blow on the street, So there's a difference between the ability to bring the fire out of the stone and putting those finishing touches on the stone to make it look just right. And a lot of stones that I would get in, they were really beautiful, but I didn't think they didn't have the aesthetics for a piece of jewelry. So oftentimes I would buy a stone because I thought it looked really pretty. And then when I got it, I knew I could make it look better, either by changing the shape of it or, a lot of times fire agate carvers like to leave every little bit of fire that exists in the rough. They want to put it in the stone there. And then and the way I look at it, it's like it's like I'll look at a stone and I'll go, well, why'd you leave that in there? That's very nice if you're going to put it on your desk and admire it every once in a while. But if you're going to put that in a ring or in a pendant and wear that every day, it just didn't make sense to me. So, from start to finish, there probably were no more than 5 fire agates that I ever carved. But I always thought I could improve, or I can make, I shouldn't use the word improve, I can make the stone more complementary to my jewelry. So I won't use the word improve because everyone has an idea of what something should look like. And I had an idea of what everything that was going to go in my work, it had to look a certain way. So, I wouldn't be afraid to take a 10 karat fire agate and make it a 5 karat fire agate if it looked better. It's all about aesthetics for me, and to have, little blurps and bumps sticking out of a stone that really wasn't going to blend for a finished piece of Glenn Dizon jewelry. I wasn't afraid to just start messing with it.
Well, that's really good information, actually. One of the things that you touched on that I actually want to ask you about in that statement is the finish. You were saying one of the first things you said is that a lot of really great carvers don't quite put the finish on the stone. What do you mean by that, by the finish? Like, how do you finish a stone to make it ready for your kind of jewelry? Because I mean, you're right about the quality of what you're putting out.
Well, I'm again, I'm a perfectionist, which isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just my nature. And I would look at things, I would do things that the public wouldn't even notice. But I would always look, when I get a stone in, I would always look under the magnification, and inevitably there'd be like little pits in the stone. Granted, the finished person that's going to wear this, they're not going to freaking look at it with a magnifying glass and see if it has pits in it, but it bothered the hell out of me. It's like, if you're going to put that much, because it takes a lot of time and effort to creating a finished fire agate, and if you're going to put that much time and effort to it, why do you leave pits in it? Why do you leave scratches in it? Why don't you finish it with a 50,000 diamond paste? It's like, I just don't understand. If you're going to go that far, why don't you go a little bit further? So it's like, I always remove pits, no matter how minor they were, and I always remove scratches, and I just little blemishes that wouldn't bother anybody but me. I always went there, and it didn't really have to bother anybody but me, because if I didn't look at a stone and if I didn't think it was drop dead gorgeous under all conditions, I would it would go into the little bag that I would say, I'll work on this stone one of these days. So it's like I could take those one of these days stones and make it, oh, I want to work with that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I definitely see what you're saying, especially with the taking and leaving the amount of color that's there that's not of top quality like the rest of it. That's something I'm definitely starting to get into now. Whereas originally, yes, absolutely exactly what you said. If I'm carving a piece of fire agate, I'm just trying to expose all of the color that can potentially be there. I'm not thinking about the finished gemstone at all. I'm thinking about how big can I get a piece of fire agate.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's the problem with a lot of gems. Would you just digressing a little bit back to opals? I knew someone that used to cut opal in Hong Kong, and they got paid by weight retention. So you would have this stupid ass stone that really didn't make any sense, but the cutter got paid by weight retention. So if they started off with a 10 carat rough and they got a 5 carat stone as opposed to a 2 carat stone, they got a bonus. So I'm not a believer in weight retention. Aesthetics. If it doesn't have aesthetics, it doesn't. I don't care. I mean, granted, I love bigger stones, but if it doesn't have the aesthetics, if you can't bring it to its most beautiful state possible, it's like, I don't understand why people don't do that. And again, I think the reason why people don't do that is because the general public, who's going to be the person that's going to finally own this piece or this piece of jewelry, they don't look at it with the same eye that I do. But again, it's in order for something to leave my studio, it has to be perfect to the greatest extent that I can make perfect. Because in reality, nothing's ever perfect, but
right.
It had to reach that point before it ever left my studio.
I'm just assuming here, but I'm guessing that most people that carve fire agate do not have the same tools to look at it under magnification. What are you looking at the stone? What type of magnification are you using? It has to be more than a jeweler's loupe, right?
No, just a 10 power jeweler's loupe, because I do have a 20, and I've actually never had a scope, but sometimes 20s, you miss things in a 20 that because your focus gets too much, and you need to have enough magnification, but it needs to be broad enough. So just a 10 power, really good Bosch and Lomb, or there's a lot of really good 10 power loupes, just a really good 10 power loupe. And to me, it had to pass the inspection over a 10 power loupe. And I can't tell you how many times. I mean, the other thing that used to drive me crazy is I can't tell you how many times I got a stone in and I looked at it and I said, this goddamn thing's cracked, and it's like I would talk to the cutter and they would say, I didn't notice it. And it's like, but I used to do the same thing with opals. There was an opal dealer that I used to buy opals from. He always bring his stuff to me because I could see a craze in an opal like nobody else could. So I would call through his material and say, this one's crazed, that one's crazed, this one's crazed. But it's the same thing with fire agate. A lot of times the cutter, and I really don't know why, maybe they're so passionate about it, the color or the shapes or the forms, they get lost in that and they don't see the little things like there's a little crack here or there's a little crack there. I mean, I sent you a one piece that has a diamond set in the middle of it. And the reason, there's a picture I sent you, and the reason why that has a diamond set in the middle of it, because it came from I'll just put a respected fire agate carver. And I looked at the freaking thing and it's got a crack in it. And it's like, it just bothered the hell out of me. So I said, okay, I'm going to drill that crack out. I'm going to set a diamond in the middle of it. And it was an awesome piece, but I couldn't let it go with that crack in it. Granted, it was so minor and minuscule that most people would never notice it, but it bothered the hell out of me. And again, if it's going to leave my studio, I've got to like it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that picture on the screen right now. There it is. This the red stone that looks like it's inside of a music note of wax. I've got the wax shot, and then I've got the gold shot right here on the screen right now. And so that had a crack in the center of it?
Had a crack in the center of it.
And you were able just to basically drill that crack all the way through, and the crack didn't lead through the rest of the stone, huh?
It didn't, yeah. Fortunately,
that's amazing.
Fortunately, it was just a relatively small crack right in a high point of the stone. And, it's like the choices were either, again, put it in that bag that I'll use someday, or just go ahead and drill it out. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? I could ruin the stone and, I lose what, $500. And in the grand scheme of things, I don't want to lose $500. But again, if I don't do something with it, it's going to end up in that bag and never get used. So I said, well, okay, I'm going to drill it out. Hopefully the best is going to happen. And the crack, fortunately, was centralized. I drilled it out. And oftentimes, I've set diamonds in fire agates. I really like the look. And that was the story behind that.
Yeah, that it definitely looks good. Oh, well, I thought I had it on the screen, and I didn't have it on the screen the whole time. I'll probably edit that in later. Here, I'll push it live right now and just leave it up for anybody that's watching this. That way they can see the stone we're talking about. I have a preview editor, and I screwed up right there in my preview editor. It was in my preview editor, not on the live screen. But the deal with cracks, I have been running into a lot of that recently. It's actually amazing how much cutting you can do on a stone and not realize there's any crack in it, and then all of a sudden you're almost all the way through and you're like, wait a second, like I'm gonna have to cut that whole second. Wait, how many are there in this thing? It's pretty surprising.
It kills you too when you've got this incredibly beautiful piece, but there's a crack in it, and what do you do?
Yeah, so far, what do? I cut it off and try and turn it into multiple stones or throw the damn thing away. I have yet to see the stone. Like, I've seen a couple of them to where I'm pulling them out and I'm thinking about working on them, and then I can see like 3 or 4 splits in them. And I'm somebody that I've mined a bunch of fire agate myself. Like, I spent 6 months in a desert breaking fire agate out of the stone with my bare hands, like no jackhammer or anything, just chisels and hammers and stuff like that. And there are stones that I remember finding out there, and I would be like, oh my gosh, this thing is so awesome, and I'd be super excited with what I found. And now I get back here and I pull that stone out and I'm like, oh yeah, this is there's 3 fractures going right through the big color bar, and I'm like, I don't even think there's one usable gemstone in this piece. Like
those are called specimen stones.
Very much so.